Hello, my beautiful friends. What an amazing day it is. And welcome back. It's a beautiful Thursday. We've got one more day before it's a Friday. We're excited about that. And this show today is jamming. We've got some winning that we have to talk about today. We're talking specifically about how the unions have lost. Democrats filed this complaint in the District of Massachusetts, and we've got an opinion and an order that came down out of the oven yesterday that we'll talk about because they should have lost this case, and now at least one federal court is coming to their senses. And what this involves is that fork in the road directive, right, for those OMB individuals. And we'll explain exactly why the court said they lose. Democrats lose. This, of course, was brought by the unions. You see here, AFL, CIO, and others now lost one. So that's good news. And we've got a ton of reaction on that. So Trump was out today. We've got DOGE updates. Raskin was out today. There were protests afoot, but there is not going to be any letting up on these efforts. We've got Scott Turner, who's explaining that this is going to be happening at HUD, Housing and Urban Development. Karoline was out yesterday. She brought receipts. RFK Jr. just got sworn in, baby. So we're all going to be so healthy and jacked. It's going to be great. And we'll listen to what he says about USAID, which of course was brought about by his uncle, JFK. And Trump is explaining IRS is coming in next. So just get ready. We're just warming up. Trump's cracking his knuckles, just stretching out a little bit because they're just getting started. Then we got to talk about what's happening with this special counsel case and the Department of Justice, because as we'll see here today, Pam Bondi is going to be rejecting some very important precedent that we've talked a lot about here, actually, and about whether or not the executive branch has the power, the capability to fire people who are under the purview of the executive branch, in this case, special counsels. And there was this one case called Humphrey's Executor versus United States, which carved out this little exception that we've talked about. Like you could have a body. In other words, Congress creates a body and you can't get rid of people on that board. And it's like this little exception. And we're asking ourselves, that's interesting. Where in the Constitution does it say you can do that? Oh, it doesn't. Yeah. So Pam Bondi's coming out and she just sent this letter in from her team, acting Solicitor General, saying there is going to be a change afoot. And that change directly implicates this case. Of course, this is the so-called special counsel case with Hampton Dellinger, who was appointed by Joe Biden. And Hampton worked with Hunter Biden, according to Fox News. And they sued to try to keep him in the office. And the judge allowed that to happen for some time. So the judge came back down and then issued an order that is going to allow him to remain in that spot. And we'll go through this and see what the judge said her basis is. So she's going to allow it to happen. And I think she's wrong, actually. I think she's going to be overturned once this gets up to the Supreme Court. And so we'll do our due diligence and see what her justifications are for these illegal rulings. Then we'll look at what's happening in the Court of Appeals and see what else is happening in the District of Columbia, because this judge, Judge Nichols, is also continuing the preliminary injunction that was the pause, the injunction on the pause. In other words, Trump is allowed to freeze the funds that are racing out the door. And so he's stopping the pause from happening, but saying if you are a USAID employee and you want to come home, you certainly can. So all that is happening. We got some Pam Bondi clips, or some conversations about Pam Bondi rather, because the Democrats are pretty freaked. And Senator Dick Durbin was also commenting about this. And we saw Kash Patel made his way through the House committee today, the House Judiciary Committee. And so we'll watch through that and see what's happening. Then we have another lawsuit that got filed. Norm Eisen is representing John and Jane Doe's number 1 through 26. They filed a new lawsuit against Elon Musk and DOGE. And what's so interesting about this one, in his 44-page complaint here, he's like, we're going to sue and dismantle, or they can't do this to us. So we'll listen to what he wrote in this, or what his lawyers wrote in this lawsuit. But what you'll notice is once we get into the meat and potatoes of this thing, it's pretty hilarious because look what he's writing. Trump is publicly Besmirching. Oh, no, we've got official claims. You can't publicly besmirch anybody anymore. And what's even worse than this is, as we'll go through this, I forget exactly where it was, but we'll see. We'll see. They're talking about emotional damages because this has been very traumatic for them. So they're suing because their little fifis are hurt and they don't like it. So mean to them. So we'll read through that. We'll see what's going on. And we'll look at Josh Shapiro's lawsuit because his fifis are also hurt because they're not getting their grifted money. And we'll see what he's filed in his lawsuit. Not going to spend a lot of time on that one. But of course, there's a lot happening. We know that the DOGE team is going to the IRS, and we got some other clips that will round out the day on, because remember Dean Phillips, he was very prognosticatory. A word? He was able to say the Democrats were about to be doomed when they had Joe Biden and Kamala Harris at the helm. And he's all now saying what we've been saying here. It's like the Democrats, they don't even know what they're doing to themselves. They're out there fighting for grift and corruption. And all of America's watching this going, what the heck are they doing? So we got a bunch of stuff to get to, my friends. Really glad and grateful that you're here. We had a great members only stream this morning. We have an amazing members only community, and you can join us in two places. Watchingthewatchers.locals.com. If you type that into a browser, you can come over there and join us. We do streams in the mornings and on Saturdays. We'd love to have you there. Or if you're watching on YouTube, just click that button, join, and we'll see you on the members only stream. We had a great stream this morning, and we'd love to see you tomorrow morning as a member. And it's a great way to support our show, and we'd love to have you there. And it's a little more casual, it's kind of fun. So come check it out. All right, so now, my friends, and links are in the description below. And if you're on Rumble, you can join on Rumble. And if you join on Rumble now, you get this nice little heart. Diamond is what I meant to say. You get the same diamond you get on Locals, and it shows up in the chat now. So they're connecting the tubes between the Rumbles and the Locals. And so it's pretty cool stuff there too. All right, so let's talk about what's happening with the unions and this order. The unions lose. The Trump administration wins this one out of the District of Massachusetts. You can see this one's fresh out of the oven, came out this week, telling us that the AFL-CIO, right? You've heard that phrase a lot. The unions, they sued the Office of Personnel Management, right? OMB. And we remember that as soon as Trump came in, this is one of the earlier lawsuits that was filed, they were very upset about this fork in the road email that all of the federal bureaucrats got, saying, listen, we're going to make some changes here, and you've got a couple options. Option one, you can take this nice little retirement package, go find a different job, have 8 months off, and figure out your life not working for the federal government. If you don't want to do that, then you can stay here, and we're going to come through. We're cleaning house, baby. And Elon was just getting warmed up. Nobody really knew what he was doing yet. So that email went out. They freaked out. They sued. And here's what the judge said. This is Judge O'Toole, and he is named George, U.S. District Judge, short order. Here's what he wrote. The plaintiffs, several Democratic labor unions that represent federal employees, they bundled all together, have moved to stop and to restrain Trump and the Office of Personnel Management and Charles Ezell, the acting director, from enforcing the deadline, which is now moot, by the way, right? So that has now expired on their website. They said, time's up, you're done. So if you have not submitted your decision on the fork in the road, you're locked in there as of, I think, today or maybe yesterday. But here's the order, and this is good precedent. Like, this is how the other judges should be ruling, saying the acting director, right, issued this. We're going to call it the fork in the road email. Now, that directive permitted certain federal employees in the executive branch to resign. They could get out of here effective September 30th, 2025. But also permitted employees who took up the offer to cease active work in their agencies and still be paid their salaries through the end of the fiscal year. Now, in addition, they would be free to pursue other employment outside the executive branch if they wish, right? Take an option, make a decision. So on January 28th, right after Trump came in, OPM sent an email to nearly all federal employees in the executive branch announcing the directive. And as originally announced, the opportunity to accept the offer was set to expire February 6th. So then they sued on February 4th. They wanted to challenge this on the basis of the APA, which we've heard a lot about, saying, you didn't give us proper notice before you make any changes to people's employment or before you do anything. You have to, go through these proper procedures. And send out an email and make notice. So there's a public comment period and blah, blah, blah. Now, the next day, the unions moved for a restraining order to stay the closing. Okay, so that the option remains open so they can decide which way to go. Trump opposed this motion, said, no, there's no extensions here. Are you nuts? On February 6th, the court ordered Trump to refrain from the deadline, and then a hearing was held on February 10th, just days ago. Now, the unions are seeking a TRO. The judge says, if you want a TRO, a restraining order, you got to show these four things. One, you're going to win. Two, there's going to be irreparable harm if we don't step in and do something, like they're all going to die or something bad's going to happen. You have to balance the equities, and you have to make sure that it tips in favor of the person who wants the TRO. And then fourth, the injunction has to be in the public interest. Like the rest of us have to be kind of okay with that. Saying here, the plaintiffs, the unions, the Democrats have not established that they're going to win. Why? Well, they're unable to succeed on the merits of their two APA claims for these reasons. One, they lack standing, Article 3 standing, because this court does not have subject matter jurisdiction over the claim. So, two major reasons. One, these people haven't explained why they need to be here, that they've been damaged or injured or should be here in some way because of some connection to the harms that are alleged. But in addition to that, when we talk about subject matter jurisdiction, the court is also saying, even if you had some sort of a problem, like you were actually injured here because and there's causation and redressability and those things, we still can't hear this claim because this claim is a union claim that should go into a different process. So, for example, some courts hear felonies, some courts hear misdemeanors, right? Some courts hear family matters. Some states have drug courts. Some courts have special jurisdiction, and other entities and agencies have jurisdiction over other things. So we can't hear this case anyways because you're unions. Here's why. Now, first, the unions lack standing to challenge the directive, right? Standing requires that the unions be more than just mere bystanders. It requires some personal stake here. You can't just file these random hypothetical lawsuits and have a basis to stop the federal government. Further, the Supreme Court recently held, this is the judge saying this, that an organization that is not directly affected by an agency's actions cannot establish standing simply by diverting its resources in response to a defendant's actions, right? So the unions themselves are not being harmed here. They're saying that the union members are being harmed. I say, okay, well, you're suing as a union, so how have you been harmed? The plaintiffs here cannot manufacture standing through self-inflicted harms either. Now, the plaintiffs here, the unions, are not directly impacted by the directive. Instead, they allege that the directive subjects them to upstream effects, including a diversion of resources to answer members' questions about the directive. They're like, well, I mean, we represent all these federal workers, is what their argument is. And since they sent this email out, all these federal workers are freaked. And so they're sending emails to all of us, like their union reps, like, what should I do? Can I get a job somewhere else? No one will hire me. And they're freaking out. So they're saying, hey, we have to expend resources to deal with all this. So we are impacted by the directive because of our members. And also, if people quit their federal jobs, we're going to lose members, and it's going to harm our reputations. Now, the unions do not have the required direct stake in this email, but they're challenging a policy that affects others, which are the executive branch employees, right? A bunch of people are like complaining on behalf of other people. This is not sufficient, says the judge. Just as the court found that the plaintiffs in this other case could not spend their way into standing just because they spent a lot of money. It's like, okay, that's great. Spend all the money you want, but it doesn't mean you got an injury. Neither can the plaintiffs, the unions in this case, establish standing by choosing to divert resources to responding to these things. Like, okay, you guys want to answer all your freaked out federal employee unions questions? That's your prerogative. Spend the money or don't. Send them to voicemail like we're doing, and away from the other union priorities. And a loss of membership dues is not certain before the September 30th deadline either. So you can't articulate that that is a clear harm. Now, in addition to that, because you people really have no reason to even be here, you're complaining on behalf of some other people that aren't a party to this lawsuit. Even if you came to us and you did have some harm, like maybe your membership dues or whatever, we can't even hear this case, okay? We lack the subject matter jurisdiction to hear this type of case in our court. While not binding on this court, there was another decision which is instructive, which is in the DC circuit right next door. In that case, the court held that the union and their claims fell within the FSL-MRS statute, okay? The Federal Service Labor Management Relations statute, which is kind of like a different court. And therefore, the district court in that case couldn't hear the case. They had to go over there and go through their process at the FSL-MRS. Go over there. Under that framework, Congress intended that if you're a litigant, you proceed exclusively through this statutory scheme. And you got to go through those procedures. Now, the DC Circuit Court of Appeals also ruled that the first Thunder Basin step, which is the name of the case, so we'll call it, the Thunder Basin, like step one, was satisfied because that provides the exclusive procedures for the unions, right? Go through this process. That's exactly the case here, all right? Congress said you should go through this to provide the exclusive procedures for disputes involving employees and their federal employers and disputes between unions representing federal employees and the federal government, okay? This is the framework that all these whiners and their lawsuits can use. Go through here. Go file a claim in this way. According to this complex scheme, which Congress created, disputes must first be administratively exhausted before the employing agency and the relevant administrative review board, and any other further challenges can go to the courts. Therefore, the first step here is satisfied because the law says we can't see the case. Now, the second step, whether we can do this, also involves determining whether the claims that you're bringing to the courts are the type of claims that Congress said, go over here. If you're bringing it to us and the law says it's there, then we got to send you over there. Again, the AFGE decision is illustrative, right? In that case, the court found that the unions and their complaints were of a type intended for review by the circuit court because there was meaningful review, they were not wholly collateral, and more. The two claims that are alleged in this case are the types of challenges that Congress wanted to govern, saying that the unions themselves may be foreclosed from this process does not mean that the adequate judicial review is lacking. All right. So the employees can go and they can go through this process. The fact that the unions can't go through the process for them doesn't mean that the employees are aggrieved. So send them through the process and stop your whining. The second and third factors are also satisfied. And so for the foregoing reasons, the temporary restraining order previously entered against Trump is hereby dissolved, and further preliminary injunctive relief is denied. Democrats and the unions lose on that one, and they should have lost on that one and many others, right? These restraining orders are brought by these people, TROs, who shouldn't be filing these in the first place, and they are overstepping their constitutional order and their bounds and trying to usurp the power of the executive branch. And so that is the final update on that case. You can see nothing further out of the oven on that one. So a nice decision from George O'Toole, hopeful that other judges will recognize these people have no standing. They have other avenues to bring their complaints. The proper remedy by the courts is to kick them out and say, go file somewhere else in a different venue or in a different agency. Bring your complaints there, not to hamstring the entire executive branch, which violates the separation of powers. But they're very upset about this. You can see even today, when there was a House hearing, we had protesters there insurrecting the whole thing.
Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. I previously served at the U.S. Agency for International.
PEPFAR saves lives. Restore AIDS funding.
Get him out.
PEPFAR saves lives. Restore AIDS funding now. PEPFAR saves lives.
All right, now what I love about this is these security guards are just throwing him out. Watch this guy. All right, buddy, you're out of here. Get out. Next one. Get out. Get out of here.
guess these guys don't watch the news. They didn't realize that PEPFAR was one of the many programs
Idiots.
that did prove to be life-saving, so the funding was restored. Somebody better give them a link to, I don't know, maybe Fox News or something like that.
Fellow.
Dunked on him. Well done. All right, so they got thrown out of there. They don't even know what they're doing. Who even knows if they know what any of that is? PEPFAR. They're like, what? How much are you paying me? That's fine. How much? Okay, cool. I'll go say PEPFAR. Is that how? PEPFAR? Hey, PEPFAR. Donald Trump, AIDS. Okay, got it. So Raskin was doing the same thing. He's not much different than what we just saw, pretty much indistinguishable. Here's what he sounded like on the House floor.
The distinguished chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Mr. Jordan, invites us to believe that we should just suspend our own interests in legislative power. We should no longer defend the laws we've passed, the programs we've adopted, the money we've appropriated. We should turn it over to the new fourth branch of government, Elon Musk, who can do whatever he wants.
No, USAID should be untouchable, and they should be able to do whatever the hell they want without any executive oversight. That's what they want, literally. They want all of these extra executive branches that nobody is really accountable for, because you make your money in the grift, right? The grift is in the gray area. There's no accountability in that middle area. Nobody really has authority over. Congress kind of created it, but the executive branch kind of runs it. And there can be bureaucrats that are there for 40 years. The fourth branch is being dismantled right now, Jamie.
And then he wants to also delegate to Mr. Musk our oversight power. We have an entire committee.
Do it then. You can do it.
Chaired by Mr. Comer. We've got our own subcommittee on oversight in the Judiciary Committee. But do they want to have hearings on Big Bird and Ernie? All of the alleged waste and fraud and abuse that Mr. Musk is finding with his untutored, unvetted, juvenile computer hacker crew?
What is he even talking about? Okay, so they seem freaked out. Juvenile, untutored? Should he have gone to your constitutional law class, Jamie Raskin, and then he could have not understood anything about the Constitution at all? So they're freaked, and we were here contemplating whether or not this would continue across all of the other agencies, and we've been very hopeful that it would. Of course, now it is. And here is Scott Turner, Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, saying, we're doing the same thing here. DOGE is coming in hot.
I'm happy to announce the DOGE task force here at HUD. We will be very detailed and deliberate about every dollar spent in serving tribal, rural, and urban communities across America. With President Trump's leadership, business as usual, the status quo is no longer the posture that we will take. And with the help of DOGE, we will identify and eliminate all waste, fraud, and abuse. We've already identified $260 million in savings and still have much more to accomplish.
Man, that's a good start. Thank you for that update over from HUD. And this was Karoline Leavitt. She was out yesterday and she got asked about this. Where's your proof of fraud? So what if they were spending on trans, whatever? No one cares, right? According to them, this is legitimate spending and excessive funding, and it is not even in their vocabulary. Everybody should get whatever they want all the time because they just print it anyway. So who cares? But she came out with receipts. Here's what that sounded like.
In the Oval yesterday gave us some information on that. We're just wondering if there's some proof, evidence. Is the White House willing to share evidence of those fraud claims, or can Elon Musk come to the briefing room and share material evidence of what he's talking about?
Sure, I would love for Elon Musk to come to the briefing room. That's why we had him go to the Oval Office yesterday, where I think he provided great answers. He was speaking in layman's terms, speaking common sense to all of you in the media, but also to Americans at home. But I would say especially to all of you in the media, because I think it's a real fallacy that there's this alleged lack of transparency when it comes to DOGE. President Trump and Elon Musk have been incredibly transparent on what DOGE is doing. There is an X account with the DOGE handle. They are tweeting out what they are doing on a daily basis. They have a website where they are posting the receipts of the contracts that they are reviewing and the payments that they have stopped from going out the door. The secretaries of our departments have stopped from going out the door. And I would also say that before it was Elon Musk making our government efficient and accountable, it was some unnamed bureaucrat that none of you knew. Elon Musk is the richest man in the world. He's also now one of the most highly scrutinized men in the world alongside President Trump because of what he's doing and the access that he is allowing. So there's great transparency. As for the actual receipts, we are happy to provide them, and I actually brought some today because all of you know I love to bring the receipts. We have contracts upon contracts that we can send and provide this information to you. Let me be very clear. We are not trying to hide anything. We have been incredibly transparent, and we will continue to be. These are screenshots of contracts that DOGE found across our government. This is a DEI contract, $36,000 for U.S. citizenship and immigration services. That is against the president's policies and his America First agenda. This is a $3.4 million contract, a Council for Inclusive Innovation at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, Department of Commerce, another DEI contract that DOGE identified. I can continue to go through these. Oh, I love this one. $57,000 for climate change in Sri Lanka. What is this doing to continue the interests of the American people?
See, they love it in the media. She's like, yeah, so what? Climate change in Sri Lanka. But they need to save the planet too. So whatever. And DEI, we love that stuff. So yeah, so what about that? And so what about that one? Right? They say to themselves, that's not fraud. That's legitimate policy. And that's not in alignment with Trump's prerogative. And for some reason, they are throwing a fit about this. Well, we know what the reason is because they don't want to lose this money and this grift. But they can't reconcile the fact like this was going to happen. Like, what did they think was going to happen when Trump won? Maybe they didn't expect this. I don't think any of us expected this, that it was going to be such a beautiful purge of all the waste. Maybe they couldn't anticipate that was coming. But what makes them think that Trump owes them keeping that money if he wants to change his prerogative? Like, what is that entitlement? Where does that come from? Here is the rest of this.
Absolutely nothing. These are the line items across the federal government that DOGE is identifying daily. They're moving very fast. There's a lot of paper that we can show you, but we're happy to do it. This administration has been more than transparent about what DOGE is doing. And here's one of their tweets that they posted about the mine. I believe this is in Pennsylvania, where the federal employee retirement system is being processed. Did anybody know this was even happening in our country before Elon Musk talked about it in the Oval Office yesterday? A lot of Americans didn't. So we are providing transparency and accessibility on a daily basis when it comes to DOGE.
Well, we like mines and we think it is efficient, and there's very important people who work in those mines, and they've been working there for 50 years. And so if we get them out of mines and we digitize anything, then it's going to lose there. And it's like constant just bickering. And, okay, you're done. Thank you for that. We have the authority to do this stuff. This is why nothing gets done in Washington, is because people like this woman, right? Look, I mean, you could just see the snark in her attitude when she was asking this question right here. Like, where's the proof? Where's the receipts that it's fraudulent? It's not fraudulent. You have to spend the money. Oh, we have to. Congress's bill says we have to fund climate change in Sri Lanka. Is that what you're saying, Democrats, that's what the bill says? No. So there's plenty of discretion. It's all in alignment with presidential prerogative and American interests, and they're following the language of the statute. So you got enough evidence of the changes that are happening that you need. And so continue to ask your questions. They're going to continue to be transparent. But the idea that the prior administration and what was happening with this shifting money was more transparent or more accessible is obviously a joke. These are people who are just hysterical because their part of the grift is being cut off. Now, here is another man who's going to come out and purge the hell out of HHS, which needs it just about as bad as anybody there. And he got sworn in, and after his swearing in, RFK Jr. explained why USAID is in fact so rotten and why these changes are necessary. Here's the swearing in. You can see this is Justice Gorsuch, Supreme Court judge, standing there along with the family for this epic, historic swearing in. And this man was castigated in more ways than one back during the COVID era, and then by his own so-called party, the Democrats, after he went independent, and then even harder by the Democrats after he came aboard Team MAGA. And it's been a hell of a transition. It's been a very welcomed journey. We're very happy to see this happen because of all the people who have been speaking out about COVID and about the health problems in this country. I think RFK is one of them who's very well suited for this position, and we're excited to see what he does. Here is the swearing in on this historic day.
I, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
I, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I take this obligation freely,
I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties of the office
on
which I am about to enter. So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. Secretary.
We did it. Wow. All right. So absolutely amazing. Judge Gorsuch running around there, shaking hands. Cheryl Hines there, shaking hands. You saw President Trump over on the flank. And here is what some of RFK Jr.'s speech sounded like after the swearing in.
A strong nation if we have a weak citizenry. If people are sick, 60% of our people are sick, 77%, as President Trump mentioned, of our children cannot qualify for military service. And we need a man on a white horse now. We need somebody who is willing to come in and has the spine and the guts and the strength to And most recently, I greatly appreciate, and I called you the day that you announced the termination of USAID. My uncle started USAID in 1961 for humanitarian purposes, to put our country on the side of the poor. It has been captured by the military-industrial complex. It has become a sinister propagator of totalitarianism and war across the globe. And very few people understand how sinister this agency really is. And President Trump saw that, and he stood up to it with a masterstroke. And we want to do the same thing with the institutions that are stealing the health of our children. We need a revolutionary figure, and you are that figure, and I'm very grateful for you for giving me this opportunity. I want to...
Yes. Wow. Amazing. So RFK Jr. understands how the apparatus works because he's been fighting it for his entire life. And now he can come in. It's like the Avengers are assembling or something. It's like that, the rings get assembled and boom, like, the whole thing is fixed. So we get new players entering the game. RFK Jr. is one of them, and it's great news. Now, after HHS is solved and we all add at least 25 pounds to our bench press, here's what is coming next. The IRS is under scrutiny, and DOGE is coming in hot.
Mr. President, DOGE workers arrived today, Gavin Clagger and others arrived today at the IRS. Do you expect to close the IRS, or what are you expecting?
No, I don't expect it, but I think that the Internal Revenue Service will be looked at like everybody else. Just about everybody's going to be looked at. So it's they're doing a hell of a job. It's an amazing job they're doing. And that force is building these, I call it the force of super geniuses. Hey! But it's building. And, they go up and they talk to some of the people about certain deals, and the people get all tongue-tied. They can't talk because these people get it. They're very smart people. We need smart people. Yes.
Mr. President.
Force of super geniuses, assemble. RFK Jr. is one of them. Tulsi Gabbard just got in. Many more are coming down the pike. Kash Patel will be there next week. And then justice will really be underway. All right, so some good stuff there. Now, let's keep this train rolling because we got some big Pam Bondi news that's now afoot. The Trump DOJ via Pam Bondi now officially rejecting precedent that had been long enforced by other executive branches, but is unconstitutional. And even other executive branches had agreed. But now you'll see there is a sea change afoot. This is what came out of the Department of Justice. The Pam Bondi, new Department of Justice, sent in notice to Richard Durbin, Senator, ranking member on the Judiciary Committee, providing him notice about a change of policy, right? This is the Office of the Solicitor General. So this is the branch that you often hear in the Supreme Court, right? Arguing to defend government policy. And now say, we're changing what we're going to be defending. Here, dear Senator Durbin, pursuant to U.S. Code, I am writing to advise you that the DOJ has determined that certain for-cause removal provisions that apply to members of multi-member regulatory commissions are unconstitutional. And we've been spending time on that. In fact, yesterday on the show, we read through these exceptions, and we'll read through more of them, or more interpretations of the exceptions today. And this will eliminate one avenue of attack that the Democrats have been including in their lawsuits. Okay, so this is a major change, saying that that entire series of cases in that precedent are no longer valid. It's going to be the official position that they're done. The department will no longer defend their constitutionality. Specifically, the department has determined that the statutory tenure protections for the FTC, the National Labor Relations Board, and for members of the Consumer Product Safety Commission are all unconstitutional. Here's why. Back in 1926, there was a case that landed in front of the Supreme Court called Myers versus United States. And in that case, they recognized, they said Article 2 of the Constitution, which is what covers the executive branch, right? The president. It gives the president unrestricted power for removing executive officers who had been appointed by him and with the advice and consent of the Senate. So think about that as applied now. It's now 2025, 100 years later, and we have special counsels that judges say you can't remove because they've been appointed by the president, even though they've been appointed and confirmed by the Senate. So put a pin in that. So then we had another case almost 10 years later in Humphrey's Executor. The Supreme Court created an exception to that rule. They said, well, okay, so you can fire anybody. It's totally unrestricted except for this. The court held that Congress may forbid the removal except for cause of members of the FTC on the grounds that the FTC, they said, well, we probably should just leave them there, exercise merely quasi-legislative or quasi-judicial powers. So the court was like, well, they're kind of like a weird agency. Like Congress kind of created it and you have to enforce it, but they don't really do much. It's like, it's kind of a legislative branch and it's kind of like a court, they say. And so we can just make it up. And so they could be required to act in discharge of their duties independently of executive control. And, you know, those of us who like went to civics class for 5 minutes would go, what? What? We got 3 branches of government. Where is this one lining? It's quasi-legislative, okay, and it's quasi-judicial. So what? And they can do it independently of executive control, said this insane court in 1935. So they just created it. Now, statutory tenure protections for the members of these agencies rely on that, right? And they're relying on they're relying on this for the special counsel, as we'll see in this opinion we read next. But obviously that's nuts. So just reading that, Humphrey's Executor, right? They just made up a whole new branch of government and said that Congress can create it and kind of control it because they can limit who's on it. And the president can appoint people, but really has no power over it, okay? So what Pam Bondi said, we're done, enough. The department has concluded that those tenure protections are unconstitutional. The Supreme Court has made clear that the holding of Humphrey's Executor embodies a narrow exception to the unrestricted removal power that the president generally has over executive officers, and that this exception represents the outermost constitutional limit of permissible congressional restrictions. Like, man, they went to the end of the line on that. Like it's barely constitutional, barely. They said even back then. Now, further, the Supreme Court has also held that the holding of Humphrey's executor applies only to administrative bodies that don't exercise substantial executive power. The Supreme Court has also explained that the Humphreys exception appears to have misapprehended the powers of the New Deal era FTC. So, right, they said, oh, FTC is going to have like no power. Turns out they had a ton of power. And they misclassified those powers. They said they were legislative and judicial, but they weren't. They were executive, obviously. So they say from Trump's new DOJ says the exception recognized in that case, Humphrey's executor, thus does not fit the principal officers who head the regulatory commissions noted above. As presently constituted, right? Because those were only applied to bodies, but all of those other agencies are just single person heads. As presently constituted, those commissions exercise substantial executive power, including binding rules they create. They issue final decisions that have serious consequences. They administrate and they adjudicate. And so an independent agency of that kind has no basis in history. It's not in the Constitution. It has no place in the constitutional structure. And so it's dead. It has to go. So they say to the extent that Humphrey's executor requires otherwise, the department intends, the DOJ, to urge the Supreme Court to overrule that decision, which prevents the president from adequately supervising his own people who execute the laws on his behalf. And that's already been eroded by other Supreme Court decisions like the Selah Law decision and more. Notifying Dick Durbin, Democrat on the Judiciary Committee, courtesy of Sarah M. Harris, acting Solicitor General. So big news, because what we're seeing is that these DC courts are relying on this case and this exception to do their dirty deeds. In fact, here's how it looks. This is an order that came out from the District of Columbia. This judge who signed this, as we know, is Judge Amy Berman Jackson. You see her right here, very Democrat judge who was protecting Clinton in the Clinton sock drawer case and others, now issued this order in the case brought by Hampton Dellinger. Hampton Dellinger is the fired special counsel. Trump fired him immediately. This guy used to work with Hunter Biden, according to Fox News, and then sued in order to get back into the White House, in order to get back in, or to the special counsel's office would be more appropriate. But to continue to be a part of the executive branch, which is what the special counsel is under, according to our interpretation. So you see, he is the office of the special counsel. And unlike the illegitimate Jack Smith, who's not even a real special counsel or a real boy, he actually was appointed and confirmed by the Senate. Never happened with Jack. But here's what the judge says, okay? And watch how she tries to shoehorn that Humphrey's executor case into this decision. She says, plaintiff Hampton Dellinger sued Scott Bessent and a bunch of people because they fired him immediately. After receiving a motion for a TRO, the court put him back in, said, after a hearing, filed a bunch of stuff, we're familiar. Now, here's the background. They say, look, so she granted an order. He is currently back in the office, technically via court order. Trump appealed it, or I think will be appealing it. Defendants appeal, right? And they sent it back down and they rejected the appeal. So we're in this court for the time being. So here is the background. They tell us the Office of Special Counsel, they tell us, is an independent agency, which is a joke because nothing is independent. Okay. It falls under some branch. Unless you amend the Constitution, you can't create a whole new branch of government that is independent from the executive branch. That's not how the Constitution works. They know that. But they say it's independent because it has an embodiment of independence, because it's supposed to operate technically independently of the DOJ, right? It's supposed to have some safeguards there so that it is independent. But it's as independent really as, internal affairs at a police department, right? They're all kind of operating under the same umbrella constitutionally. Now, they're going to make the argument that that's not true, that this is actually independent outside the structure of the Constitution. They say that Congress created it, right? It was via a Civil Service Reform Act. See how that's an act, not an amendment? That means this was just legislative, so they can't change the three branches of government. The OSC was first established in 1989. Congress separated it out to make it, quote, an independent agency because of the Whistleblower Act of 1989, whatever. The statute that spells out the powers state that the OSC shall protect federal employees and more. The statute enables the agency to do a bunch of stuff, right? Find waste of funds, abuse of authority, do other things. Now, the agency can receive and investigate things. She's describing their powers because they are very powerful. They can do things, investigate crimes, take depositions, investigate things, right? Issue subpoenas. They have a ton of power, clearly. Look what Jack Smith did. He wasn't even lawful. This guy at least got appointed and confirmed. If the Office of the Special Counsel thinks that there are reasonable grounds to think that something happened, they can issue corrective actions. They also have authority under the Hatch Act to investigate any allegation about political activity, right? And political intrusion and disciplinary action. So this is a Joe Biden Democrat operative that this judge wants in there. And so they can review all sorts of regulations. And so thus they say, as created, you got to report to Congress. Special counsel submits report to Congress. We've seen how this works. And the office is led by the special counsel, who is appointed by the president and serves for a term of 5 years. Advice and consent of the Senate. And they say by the law, right, this is Congress, the special counsel may be removed by the president only, this is a congressional shackle, handcuffs, for inefficiency, neglect of duty, or malfeasance in office. So Congress created this, and they kind of control it because of what has happened here. So here's the factual background, right? Joe Biden nominated this person to be special counsel. He got confirmed on election year. 5-year term will expire in 2029. On Friday, February 7th, Sergio N. Gore, shout out to Sergio, sent this email to Hampton and said, hey, bucko, on behalf of President Trump, I am writing to inform you that your position as special counsel of the U.S. Office of Special Counsel is terminated, effective immediately. So then Hampton sued Monday morning. 5 claims, blah, blah, blah. Count 1, termination of Trump was clear violation of the law. He says that it's contrary to constitutional power, not in accordance with the law, and wants declaratory judgment. So here's what the judge says. Now, a temporary restraining order is an extraordinary remedy. Supreme Court explained, these are all the standards to get the TRO, sliding scale, and more. But says, I think that he's going to win. And watch what a joke this is based on the Humphreys executor case. Says the court finds there's a likelihood that Hampton is going to win on the merits. And I think she's dead wrong. I think she's going to get reversed on this. The Supreme Court is going to come out and explain that exception is overruled. And this is nonsense because you'll see why. Says the effort by the White House to terminate Hampton without identifying any cause is against the statute, which says you can only remove him from inefficiency, neglect of duty, or malfeasance in office. So he's yours forever. This language comes from Congress. Now, Trump says that language is unconstitutional. You can't put handcuffs on the executive branch. That's a separation of powers problem. But she says, but no court has said that yet. And to date, the Supreme Court has taken pains to carve the OSC out of its pronouncements that the president can just fire people. Moreover, the reason that is underlying these decisions doesn't extend to the unique office involved in this case. So let's see what she says. So in SELA law, which was the case where the Supreme Court said you can actually fire the head of the CFPP because that agency had the similar, was basically the same thing, right? It was another appointed person and you could fire them. Supreme Court said, yep, you can fire them. Otherwise, you have no power. The Ninth Circuit upheld the for-cause removal, agreeing with the decision, and the Supreme Court granted cert. Now, because the government agreed with the petitioner, the court appointed an amicus to defend the judgment. The court began by repeating, saying, as a general matter, the Constitution does give the president the authority to remove those who assist him in carrying out his duties. It said, the president's power to remove is flowing from Article 2. But the court did not announce a blanket rule in that case, right? So she's like, but yeah, it's pretty broad. If he couldn't fire that person, if the president, the court said, couldn't wield his executive power, then he's not held responsible. for discharging his own responsibilities, and everything stops with the president. The buck stops with the president. That's how the structure works. It doesn't work if you have other people outside of those three structures. So the judge recognizes that, right? But they didn't give us a blanket rule that the president has the power to remove the head of every independent agency, as you want us to believe. This is such a cope sentence. Such a cope sentence. So she's like, yeah, it's pretty broad. The court said, yeah, the president's power to remove flows from Article 2, and he doesn't have power if he can't do this here. But she just doesn't, she's shoehorning this in. She wants to have this guy here. So the court held that the CFPB's leadership by a single individual violated the separation of powers, and it went into considerable detail as to why the director should not be shielded from control. But before it turned to the CFPB, the court reviewed its prior decisions, and it went through Humphrey's executor, saying that Congress's ability to impose restrictions will depend on the office, right? And Humphrey's executor was about the FTC, and there were 5 people back then on the FTC. And the court said, in that case, that's lawful. The president can't remove people from that. But in the SELA law opinion, the Supreme Court listed some of the circumstances that animated Humphrey's executor, and several of them pertain to the OSC today. The court noted, they said that the agency performed specific duties to help Congress, like they made investigations, and that's what the OSC did. So it's just like the FTC back in 1923 or 1933, whenever that was, 32. The SELA law court also pointed out that the FTC's duties were neither political nor executive, right? It called for a trained judgment of a body of experts informed by experience. Here we have a statute that incorporates Congress's judgment and limits the removal of this person. And SELA law also chose not to walk away from the court's decision in 1988 that also held that statutory protections for removal afforded to independent counsel, which is now defunct. In other words, they didn't dump this case. So she's like, well, they didn't give us a blanket rule, and they didn't dump this other case, which is now irrelevant because the Independent Counsel Act was terrible, and so they got rid of that. So because I don't have any real clear guidance from this, even though she clearly does have guidance, she has SELA law, she's distinguishing SELA law. She's saying CFPP is different than a special counsel, even though they're both single heads of agencies that have tremendous power. She distinguishes it. She says all of the points lead to a conclusion that SELA law just does not answer the question presented in this case, which is a joke. It clearly does. She's going to get overturned. The Chief Justice took trouble to say this. They say the CFPP defenders tried to compare the agency to the special counsel, but the court resisted that, right? They brought it up in that case. The OSC exercises limited jurisdiction, says the court, to enforce certain rules governing federal government employers and employees. It does not bind private parties at all or wield regulatory authority comparable to the CFPB. So that's how they're distinguishing them. Latching onto that, saying that that will make the Supreme Court continue with the carve-out, essentially. Saying so, since they reference that little possible carve-out, like the Office of Special Counsel is only limited and it only governs federal employees, we can allow that to happen, is their distinction. So therefore, they say, SELA law is not dispositive. And there's nothing else that makes us change. And so although while the opinion made clear that the numbers of individuals should not be the touchstone, right? Because the exception was for an agency of 5 at the FTC, and this is an agency of 1. She says the OSC is not an agency endowed with power to articulate or implement or enforce policy that infects or impacts broad swaths of the American public. Are you kidding me? Yeah, it does. We saw what special counsel so-called Jack Smith did. We know that what they are doing is basically weaponizing this office to impact public policy. Because they're not writing legislation doesn't matter. It does not have broad rulemaking authority or wield substantial enforcement authority over private actors. Yeah, okay, if they're appointed for that, they certainly can. Trump was a private actor. It is an agency with limited jurisdiction. Its job is to investigate government employees. And so she's continuing to carve out an exception, which again, I think is constitutionally illiterate. So the court is going to have no choice but to get rid of this exception. Saying plaintiff asserts that he has a statutory entitlement to be the OSC head, and it's well established now that allegations of economic loss and other things are not enough. But it's more than that. This is not a routine case. He was appointed to 5 years. There are no facts to suggest that an order maintaining him in his role would be disruptive to Trump, which she didn't even ask about. She just put him back so he could get out his emails. But anyways, this goes on. So more case law. She says that Trump is insisting that there is authority to fire him and that it's irreparably harming the administration. But in making that finding, the prior courts, addressed things that they addressed. And as she wraps it up, she says, the court agrees that there's a bunch intertwined. Plaintiff is a public official suing public officials, and both the scope of presidential authority are brought into play. But he says, Hampton, that these actions have caused widespread uncertainty and more. And so the office of the special counsel is unique with narrow focus, blah, blah, blah. So here in conclusion, she writes, it is ordered that from the date of this entry until the court rules on the preliminary injunction, he shall continue to serve as special counsel at the same position he occupied on February 7th in the same terms. Don't deny him access to the resources or materials of that office or recognize the authority of any other person as special counsel. Okay, so he's back in charge. So he gets access to his emails and all the things that he had access to, which is probably exactly what Judge Amy Berman Jackson wanted. Now, in light of this order, the administrative stay is vacated and now it shifts into a different phase. She'll rule on the injunction. And so everything else is denied. The court will hold a hearing on this February 26 at 10 a.m. The parties are directed to confer and inform the court by tomorrow of their position about the legal nature of the dispute and whether this should be consolidated and more. And so Judge Amy Berman Jackson, right, the same judge who was protecting Clinton, now protecting the Biden special counsel who used to work with Hunter Biden, shoved him right back in that office. And so we're going to be hearing this dude's name a lot. Just get used to it. Hampton Dellinger will be back for hearings in the foreseeable future. But I think there is real panic out there. You can see our friend Jeff Carlson was clipping this one for us today, was watching MSNBC so we don't have to, and is explaining that Marc Elias is looking like he's having a freak out over there. Here's what that sounds like.
FBI have not yet been replaced, according to multiple people familiar with the personnel changes. Trump's appointees at the Justice Department have been leading the morning meeting in recent weeks, running through threats of the day. People have been moved to border security. Bondi's role in or plans for the morning meeting have not been able to be ascertained, but this is some reporting that says it seems clear she does not want any remnants of the last administration to linger in the Justice Department headquarters. On one of her first days as Attorney General, Bondi entered a secured facility in the National Security Division, according to two people. She saw portraits of Biden, Harris, and Garland, and in front of multiple Justice Department employees, Bondi pulled the portraits from the wall and stacked them in a corner. To your point about retribution and the entire government being hollowed out and refilled and repurposed for retribution, at DOJ at least, it seems to be starting very clearly at the top.
Yeah.
Right, and that's Donald Trump's plan, right? I mean, Donald Trump cares who the Attorney General is. He cares who the Director of the FBI is.
We all do, yeah.
Because they have the ability to investigate his political opponents, potentially indict his political opponents, and certainly make his political opponents' lives legally very difficult. He cares about Pete Hegseth at the Department of Defense because they control the weapons.
You can see he seems a little bit nervous there because he's realizing that Trump has the same powers that they had and that they abused. Trump, of course, is not going to abuse it, but the people who abused their power and violated due process of law, the presumption of innocence, and weaponized the agencies to go after their opponents, they broke the law and they should be held accountable for that. Even Dick Durbin over from the Senate is upset about this. And Jake Tapper If you've ever heard him lately, man, he's been extra annoying lately with his hysteria over the Trump administration's constant winning.
So they are saying that he is the one, Kash Patel is the one that orchestrated the purge of FBI officials who have been basically forced out of the FBI. The request for individuals who were involved in any of the arrests of January 6th.
There you go. I was going to say, close your mouth, Dick. You got to close your mouth there. Can't be agape when you're on national TV. You know, close that out. It'll block that.
Out of the FBI, the request for individuals who were involved in any of the arrests of January 6th defendants to fill out questionnaires. That they're saying he's the one behind it all?
Follow the dots. It goes from the White House with Stephen Miller, the deputy to the president, to the acting Attorney General Beauvais, and the message is Kash Patel, KP, the initials, wants you to move faster in purging the ranks of the FBI, like they've done already in DOJ. This is the day, or 2 days before Patel testifies under oath in our committee that he's had nothing to do with this. So clearly he's misleading us, or worse.
So
they're nervous about Kash. Doesn't matter. It looks like Kash is coming in hot. Here is the vote count that took place today. We watched this morning live on our members only stream, and it was fun.
Favorably reporting the nomination of Kash Patel to be Director of Federal Bureau of Investigation, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Graham.
Aye.
Mr. Gordon.
Aye. Priceless. Used to be in the tent.
Aye. Mr. Cruz.
Aye.
Mr. Hawley.
Aye.
Mr. Tillis.
Aye.
Mr. Kennedy.
Aye.
Mrs. Blackburn. Aye. Mr. Schmidt.
Aye.
Mrs. Britt. Aye. Mrs. Moody. Aye. Mr. Durbin.
No.
Mr. Whitehouse.
No.
Racist.
Ms. Klobuchar. No. Mr. Cruz.
Out of there.
He wants no by proxy.
No by proxy.
Mr. Blumenthal.
No. I guess utility.
Ms. Serrano. No.
Sex questions.
Mr. Booker.
No.
Spartacus.
Mr. Padilla.
No.
Mr. Welch.
No.
Vermont.
Mr. Schiff.
No.
Pencil neck.
Chairman Grassley.
Aye.
On this vote, the ayes are 12, the nays are 10.
The vote of 12 to 10, the nomination will be favorably reported to the floor.
All right, so Kash Patel makes it out of committee, and of course, we'll be looking forward to him getting confirmed with haste so that he can lead the FBI into a new golden age of justice. All right, so good stuff. All right, now, let's talk about Democrats and how much of a rough time they're having. Democrats are so upset with Trump's new changes and the constant winning in the administration that they're now filing lawsuits and they're claiming emotional damage, as we'll see here very soon. It's a 44-pager filed by J. Doe's 1 through 26, and the purveyor of this lawsuit is the very terrible Norm Eisen, who has been responsible for a lot of the Trump lawfare, some even speculating he may be behind many of the civil cases that were lodged against Trump during the election. So he brought this. He says, breaking! We're suing Musk and DOGE for violating the Constitution. It's one of the more embarrassing lawsuits we've seen because the people who are complaining about it are whining about dumb stuff. They have no right to your personal data, no authority to dismantle entire agencies. We're calling their bluff and taking them to court. Okay, Norm. So here's what he wrote. Now, here's the nature of this action. Listen to this. Elon Musk has an office in the White House and no supervising official and a team of individuals with wide-ranging access. Now, he was the driving force behind the creation of DOGE, it's true, and acts as the de facto administrator, despite lacking any formal announcement by Trump or any public process affiliated with this. They're like, we need some committee to look over this. You go, what are you talking about? Trump takes office. He has tons of advisors and counsel and tons of people that come in, chief of staff and director of this and many things. That's what Elon is. Now, in his role, They say Musk has extraordinary power, and he's doing all sorts of things. And what's so fun about these lawsuits is you can just see the absolute winning in their lists of and their screeds, right? His power includes a ton. And what he's doing is dismantling entire, here you go, independent federal agencies. No, they're not independent, so stop with that. So recent weeks demonstrate that Musk is doing this, right? A reckless slash and burn pattern, which has been one of the most enjoyable experiences on the show. It says he identifies a federal program, targets them, relies on information posted on X, he picks them with the help of America. Then he installs DOGE, which largely consists of former employees, and sends them into the agencies. Then they gain access to the core operating systems. It's like a fun novel we're reading together, often demanding access to stuff that is forbidden by privacy and security laws for individuals who have no clearance to access that info, right? All that's debatable. Now, because of the people who are actually accessing it do have the access to it, and he's accessing the same, like, core operating systems, like what is he in, like the Linux kernel or something? He goes into the same portal that everyone else is funneling their money requests into. If resistance is met by the, quote, duly appointed officers, whatever that means, or regular staff, they threaten them, and they ensure that any personnel roadblocks are placed on leave or otherwise removed immediately, walked out, perhaps even amplifying threats. See that, perhaps? Amplify threats against staff on X, heightening the risk of third-party harassment, right? Can't make that claim with any real solidarity, so they're like, perhaps. Pathetic. Use the agency's internal technology and informational systems, again without legal authorization by, I guess, Norm, to identify personnel for termination and contracts for freezing. It's been happening at a rapid pace. All internally by the appropriate people. Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent was appointed and confirmed by the Senate. He has his team. They're directing these things to happen. The president is directing these things to happen. That is the authorization. It's authorized. Begin dismantling the agency from within, severely disrupting or crippling them, and posting about it on X, which is just so great. They hate it. So Elon, thank you for the posts. They hate it. Keep them coming. We'll continue to retweet them. In the case of USAID in particular, Musk's actions were far ahead of other members of the Trump administration. And it's clear the duties of Musk and DOGE have performed are starting to dismantle the Department of Education. And Musk has not been nominated or confirmed by the Senate. So, moreover, even if Musk is qualified, Treasury is, and many others are. Finally, even if Musk could somehow be considered a mere employee, there's a grave violation of separation of powers. Let's see how he explains this. But there are questions about his power. They're not merely academic. Lots of people are losing things here, and this is an unconstitutional power grab. And so for all these reasons, what they're asking for is an injunction. Stop Elon Musk and DOGE from performing their duties until Musk is properly appointed pursuant to the Constitution, right? So into what position? So here's what they say. All these Jane Does who are so cowardly as like little government employees that they won't even put their names behind this because they're pathetic. When they don't want retribution or whatever, but then they just smear the J6ers all the time. And listen to some of these people. So Jay Doe, this is where it gets hilarious, is a professional services contractor who has been with USAID since 2017. Their role is to coordinate humanitarian assistance. Their main duties include managing a portfolio of partners and providing guidance to junior staff. This is some, bureaucrat. Through work with USAID, they've been deployed into dangerous areas like Pakistan. And under their contract, in order to end the work, the government is required to provide 15 days notice. Well, they got notice. As a result, they were cut off from their email without any notice. Well, they're not entitled to access to emails. They ended the contract. They're still paying them. Doesn't mean they get access to like the refrigerator. You're done. You're notified. You're done. As of February 12th, they were given access to their email, but not to other critical systems, like I guess their money. They say DOGE have also been given full access to the USAID systems, and they can see their personnel files. Oh no. Government employees are seeing other government employee information. We're not seeing that Elon is seeing any of that. Did Elon see any? Is he looking at people's personal info? They haven't proven that. As a result of the dangerous nature of JDO1's job, specifically their deployment, there's all sorts of personal information in there, like tattoo descriptions, a passphrase, family member info, and all of this stuff. It's extremely confidential, and she's worried Elon's going to use it. So that's one. Now, JDO2 is another employee, 10 years, this person. Their main duties are technology, cybersecurity, and privacy, which we've done a terrible job on because the Chinese have control of everything. On January 30th, was working when they were told to provide access to people from DOGE. Number 2, conducted research and determined that the people who were trying to get access from DOGE, this cybersecurity government worker, determined that the DOGE people were hackers. Oh no. Elon Musk's hackers. Very sophisticated. So JDO number 2 is like, I'm alarmed, and raised this issue with their supervisors and said, we can't give those people access here. But then JDO 2 thereafter discovered that DOGE had already gotten access. And they were given root access to these systems, the highest level ever. And you could take over the system. They can add data. They can create user accounts. Oh no. And then DOGE personnel who did not have a security clearance used their administrative rights to grant themselves access to restricted areas. It's unclear what the DOGE personnel did with that access, and I'd like to see more of this. DOGE personnel have taken over delegate rights to every USAID mailbox. They're in control of every email, which they got to be freaked about. With this, they have the ability to see every email, delete, even send on behalf of the user. Now, Joe number 2 is also aware that there is a rapid preparation to tear down the USAID network to create a condition where USAID employees will not have access to any facilities nor any computing environment at all. Gone. On February 4th, JDO 2 was put on administrative leave, lost access to everything. JDO 2 was allowed back in once this order came out into USAID, apparently pursuant to a TRO in a separate lawsuit. Now, JDO 2 understands that DOGE personnel had administrative privileges into all the systems and tools, and they took info out of the agencies and they sent it elsewhere. They got what they needed. Now, DOGE's actions, here it comes, caused JDO 2 emotional injuries. Right there. Very upset. Feelings got hurt because he got fired and locked out of his emails. And you know what might have been happening in those emails? He's like, wait a minute. Could they see my browser history too? Like, oh yeah, easy. They could see that. Could they see my Amazon browsing? Huh? No wonder he's got emotional damages. As JDO 2 is aware of the extent of confidential information that has been breached and privacy laws broken. Emotional damage. So JDO 2 also understands the buildings have been given to other agencies. So they're like, they brought in the Border Patrol, including allowing the breaking down of offices and cubicles. Okay, I'm telling you, man, it's like what's happening is just incredible. Like the judge issues a TRO, like you can go back to your office, let them in. They walk in, everything's gone. It's not there. And there's Border Patrol agents there eating burritos. USAID staff and contractors who worked in the buildings are not allowed inside, even to obtain their personal belongings. Oh, we'll let you. Yeah, no, we would let you back in the USAID building. Here's the thing. There is no more USAID building, so it's gone. And your stuff is gone. Should have taken it with you. JDO 3, who is a PSC, who's been with USAID, humanitarian, whatever that is, the Bureau of Humanitarian Assistance, whatever that is. They're part of a support relief group, whatever that is. They fill regular staffing shortages in DC. And they surge to support disaster responses around the world. Apparently not in North Carolina, though. They are a former Army officer and an engineer with high-level security clearance. They have filled roles in programming and other things. Now, as a result, this person, JDO 3, has been locked out of their email account and other systems. since February, has received no communications about the status, has over $15,000 worth of travel vouchers that should be paid by the agency that's not been paid. And another one has spent 20 years working in this field. Not anymore. JDoe 3 does not know if they will lose their job, has no prospect of getting considerable employment. Yeah, that's the point. Especially if the humanitarian aid sector collapses with huge cuts to U.S. funding. Yep. Yeah, I don't know if I can get another job doing this work. Yeah, because no one else can afford it. There's no rationale for this to exist unless you just get paid by us. JDoe 3 is worried what will happen if there's a humanitarian emergency in her bureau. Well, we can't respond. We can't go save the planet. Sorry, yeah. Sorry about that. A decision has been made. You're no longer necessary for this role. JDoe 3 has dedicated 10 years of their life to this. And as a result of Trump, this person was cut off from their email too. Witness the negative impacts of the stop work orders. People are directly impacted. Says, as a result of this, we're now unlawfully discarding things, witness the harm of colleagues. This person, wow, this is amazing. Hilarious. Well, okay, so JDoe witnessed the harm of their colleagues, including a fellow whom JDoe 4 had arranged to join the agency. Okay, so JDoe 4, probably a Jane. It's like meets this handsome man while she's at a trans concert in the Sahara. Says, you know, you'd be great to come work with us. It's like the beginning of a James Bond movie or something. And they're traveling around. Come join us at the USAID. He says, you know, that sounds great. I'll see you tomorrow morning. I can't wait to go make some comic books together. The fellow was en route to their first day of work when he was notified this position was eliminated. Finally, JDoe experienced a direct personal harm when the president and Musk labeled civil servants as lunatics. And they threatened to end their employment at a whim. Even though JDoe's work has been supported by bipartisan appropriation bills and is based on systematic analysis. Oh, gosh. This person should have been... Anybody who says my work is based on systematic analysis and bipartisan appropriation bills should be fired immediately, okay? Like, clearly. That's your justification. Well, I mean, a lot of people spent money for me to do this, and I do systematic analyses. You're fired immediately. I mean, what? I don't even care where you're from. You're gone. And by the way, civil servants who are making these claims, in my opinion, are lunatics. What are you talking about? And some of them who are acting like lunatics should be called lunatics. So JDoe number 5 is another one. You can see how this just keeps going. A PSC who has been with USAID for 3 years. They support the agency's efforts to combat human trafficking, which of course we don't like at all. That's why we want the border closed. But they kept the border open and we're paying NGOs to traffic people in. But they say, well, I care about human trafficking, which is weird because they work for an agency that facilitated it. Strange. For instance, at the end of February, they were scheduled to travel to Southeast Asia. Oh, other human trafficking in other parts of the world. Got it. Not here where we care about. Got it. To help design new activities that would have worked to strengthen the government's ability to respond to trafficking rings in Asia. Okay. So this is some dumb consultant who, like what? Make tranny comic books? Is that what they're doing? What are these new activities? They lost access to their email without explanation. When that shut down, they also lost the ability to finish their report. Great. The loss of their email also prohibited them from responding to an audit. Well, you've just got audited, okay? Here, we're doing an audit right now. We don't need your report, which says we need more money. You've been audited and you're fired. When they regained email access, there were no emails in their inbox from their previous week, even though they'd repeatedly copied their work email address, trying to copy it. All right, so like they canceled the emails. They remain confused and anxious about the status of their employment, emotional damage. To date, no one at the agency has given them any guidance on whether they're on admin. Yes, they have. There's plenty of guidance. They went to the website. You could see it. And they probably got the fork in the road email. Only their contracting officer has the authority to end the contract. No, that's not true. There has also been no guidance on if or how they should finalize the report, audit, and other activities that they were working on. So they're traumatized. Here's another person, 25 years in the field. Great. Subject matter experts who works on supporting independent media. Which ones? Like the ones like 10 out of the 11 in Ukraine or what? Advocating for digital rights. If this is true, I would like them to do that. They don't need tax money to do that. Just start a YouTube channel like the rest of us. And promoting information integrity, which means probably censoring us. There it is. Working on countering authoritarianism and foreign malign influence, which undermines U.S. national security. Great. A censor. Perfect. Under their contract, in order to end this, they need 15 days notice. They got it. They were in Africa working with USAID when the stop work order came. They traveled back home, freaked out, cost them tons of money. And as a result, they lost access to their work email. And they still have no idea what's going on. They don't even know if their insurance is going to be covered. Oh, terrible. So they're going to lose their insurance. Great. That's only going to be 14 days. They'll be all right. John Doe is a civil service person. 10 years there. Disaster response. He got cut off. The IT person shared that representative from DOGE had access to everything. The IT personnel knew this because they were required to help DOGE get access. On the morning of February 3, Jade07 was contacted by USAID personnel overseas who were stranded without access to their accounts and their emails and whatever. On Tuesday, 7 went into the office, was eventually informed by colleagues, you had to leave, you're gone. So 7 went home to keep working. That evening, as a result of Trump, they were told they're on administrative leave. He lost access to all of his systems. Gone. Says these files are extremely sensitive. So it's wild. So they lost access to their personal, medical, and security clearance files. Okay, so like these guys, like they were using their personal office emails for like everything, right? Why does it have family member and all that other info in there? We could be doxxed, and you're concerned about being doxxed. He's extremely worried about this prospect. Like Elon's going to get your information and put it on his X account. What did you break the law? Are you going to be indicted? Number 8 is a PSC who worked for 16 years for the federal government, now gone. They're part of a team that provides emergency aid. Where have they gone? Oh yeah, Gaza and Ukraine. Great. Back-to-back deployments on Armenia, Gaza, and Ukraine. Great. Don't need you. As a result, this person was locked out. No email. No communication, don't know what to do. 9, high risk area in the Middle East. Tried to log into their account, gone. No access, weren't notified of being cut off. Hopes they can get out and get taken care of, but they're still trying to work. They've tried to reach the helpline in DC, but there's no one's answering. You know what the answer is. You're done, find a different solution. So all of these others, so they give us a kind of a rundown here. So they give us like 10 of them. They say 10, 12, 14, 17, 19, and the rest of them are also other contractors. They've lost access to this. And Musk is the de facto DOGE administrator. And the DOGE service was established. And so you can see they want them to stop what they're doing. And they give us all these details. Long lawsuit, so we'll just skip past this. And he's telling us, yeah, Musk created DOGE. He's created a bunch of posts about this, and it has been created. And now they're causing emotional damage to all of the individuals who are in this lawsuit because they know what's coming, right? They don't want you to see what they've been doing, what they've been up to, and they're freaked. One person who's also freaked about this is Maxine Waters, and she let this one slip when she was having a conversation with Jerome Powell.
When Musk comes knocking at the Fed's door, you gonna let him in?
I don't have anything for you on that.
Would you like to tell us today that you won't let DOGE into the Federal Reserve or have access to the systems and the data?
So I don't have any, we've had no contact, and I don't really have, I have nothing for you to report today on that.
Well, you know what happened to Treasury, and you know what happened over at the CFPB, and the people of this country are being violated because all of our privacy is being taken up by Elon Musk and Trump And we don't know what all they have on us, our bank accounts, everything that in our lives. So I want to protect it in the Fed. Mr. Powell.
We don't know what they have on us. Well, we're about to find out, aren't we there, Maxine? So here is Governor Josh Shapiro. He's also freaked out, so he's suing. He's saying to protect Pennsylvania and to get our money, I'm left with no choice but to pursue legal action to defend our Commonwealth. And there's this new refrain that's popping up. It's like, wait a minute. New York just got cut off, and now Pennsylvania's getting cut off, and all these other states are not getting their sanctuary city money, right? They're clawing back the FEMA funds and the rest of this federal government money. And they're like, wait, we paid into that. Like, we're New Yorkers. We pay a bunch of taxes too. So we should get the rest of the country to fund our illegal alien problem and more. And from my perspective, money is it gets commingled a lot. It's kind of hard to trace. And Joe Biden spent a ton of money that we didn't have. And so we can just, I think, with a clean conscience, say that the New York taxpayer money has been spent. That went to Ukraine. It's gone. So now this rest of this money, like the FEMA money that we clawed back, this money that we're clawing back from Josh, that's America's money, not Pennsylvania's money for illegal aliens and for democratic causes, not New York's for sanctuary cities. It's changing. Now they're going to sue, and we'll see where it goes. But here is what Josh Shapiro submitted. It's a 38-pager. Let me just show you the highlights here. You can see this is another state suing on behalf of Pennsylvania. This guy also obviously has presidential aspirations, suing Doug Burgum, Department of Interior, and he's saying that they got a lot of money that was supposed to be coming their way. And here's where some of that money went. Pennsylvania EPA says that we already had money, $3 billion over 15 years that was supposed to come to us. We also have $76 million of federal funding to plug abandoned oil and gas wells. That's cut off. Other grants, $126 million each to allow 28,000 low-income households to perform work on their homes that will lower their utility bills. We're paying for that? I don't think it's Pennsylvania tax dollars that are coming out of that 126. That's the rest of us, right? And the government's just giving it back to them so that they can pay Democrats $126 million to go do a bunch of stuff to get Democratic votes in Pennsylvania. Now, the Pennsylvania agencies have already entered into agreements, and those funds are ours. However, President Trump has now unilaterally and arbitrarily suspended or restricted these funds. And again, my friends, so what's so interesting about this development, right? At the start of the week, maybe at the end of last week, we were sitting here watching all these TROs come out, and the media was salivating, declaring victory. Oh, Trump can't do this. Trump can't do that. He's stopped. There's an injunction. There's a TRO, right? Finally, the judges are saving democracy. Like, there was that refrain, and it felt like, wow, man, this is coming in quick. A lot of lawsuits, a lot of filings. But I just have to point out that throughout all of that, the Trump administration has not stopped or skipped a beat at all. And they've done this by identifying alternative, independent sources of power and justifications for doing the things that they're doing. When a judge says, nope, you can't do that because of that directive order, this executive order, because the OMB directive was unlawful, so I say. So your injunction, nope, we find some other basis to do it. This is a lawsuit that just got filed today, recently. Today. Pennsylvania is still saying, okay, despite all of these injunctions, they're not slowing down at all. Okay, we're still cutting people off. And we saw that yesterday when another filing came in and said, we just got cut off this morning, Judge. So it's not slowing down. It's only picking up. So they better get used to it. Since around the 27th, federal agencies have restricted Pennsylvania agencies for about $3.1 billion in total. In addition to funding the programs, these include $800 million in other funding for clean water infrastructure, $400 million for manufacturing and industrial companies throughout Pennsylvania to mitigate. Look, it's all garbage crap. to mitigate their greenhouse gas emissions, and tens of millions for a program that supports resilient and reliable electric service in rural communities. What are you doing? That's outside of the alignment of presidential prerogatives. We're not giving you green energy garbage anymore. You guys can spend your own money on that. Pennsylvania agencies have over $2.5 billion remaining under grant programs that are now suspended, for which reimbursement of expenses should be allowed. Over $1 billion of the $2.5 billion has already been obligated, including to other people who are doing the work. So they're like, we already hired the contractors and already promised them the money. Too bad. Projects canceled. In addition, $2.69 billion was appropriated for an abandoned mine program. What are they going to do? Shove some more federal records down there? We don't need it. In all, then, federal agencies' recent suspensions have jeopardized $5.5 billion that has been committed to Pennsylvania. And there's going to be an interesting thing that pops up, an interesting distinction here. Because I would much rather spend our money in the states, right? I mean, we've talked about this before. It's like, we pay so many taxes and we're always wondering, where does this money go? Like, our roads get worse every year. There's no real benefit. Like, what if we took all of this USAID money, right? Billions of dollars, and we built one new nuclear power plant in every state in America? We'd all have like free energy, like literally free electricity for the rest of our lives and our kids' lives and their kids' lives if we doubled our nuclear capacity, right? What if we did something like that? But we don't. Instead, right? It goes to green energy garbage. It goes to useless things like lowering greenhouse gas emissions and $5.5 billion that could actually go to something useful. So we'll have that conversation at some point when Trump comes back up with infrastructure plans and more. Like, we're in the cutting phase. We're not in the bulking phase yet, but we'll be in the bulking phase. You can believe it, because there will be good argument that he's got to spend this money somehow, but that's a separate conversation. But here, Josh wants that money back, and if they don't have that, which is being siphoned off by Democrats for Democratic entities and agencies, that money stops flowing right back up, trickling back up to the Democrats. So it's going to be brutal, right? That's $5.5 billion of basically Democrat infrastructure that's now cut off. Shapiro and members of Pennsylvania agencies have been working with federal partners to try to restore these funds. I don't know how they're helping you. It's cut off. You're done. Despite 2 temporary restraining orders, so we have to sue. And now we're suing. In executing these funding suspensions, agencies have asserted power to suspend and restrict. Doesn't matter if Trump dislikes it because Congress has appropriated the money. Here, federal agency defendants have exceeded their authority. They're not explaining plausibly why these funds are being suspended. They've given you an explanation. You know why. Because it's for Democratic garbage projects. Unilaterally suspending the funds violates the Constitution. He's not allowed to do that. And so we want an order that prevents federal agencies from violating this, and we want our money back. Give us our money. Billions of dollars, $5 billion gone, and not going to be sent over their way. And Ron Wyden, Mr. Seed Oils, says, my office is now hearing that DOGE is at the IRS. They've arrived. That means, he says, this is a Democrat, that Musk's henchmen are in a position to dig through a trove of data about every taxpayer in America. Versus what? Other Treasury hacks. And if your refund is delayed, they could be the reason. From Ron Wyden. Yeah. No, Ron. Your refunds are delayed. Okay. You're not getting your money anymore. And that's why you're so upset. So here's a great question that Elon and Representative Eric Burleson were asking about this. What the hell happened to the Democratic Party? Why are Democrats happy with their money going to non-American interests? What does that tell you about them? They didn't always used to be that way. Here's Bill and Al Gore, along with the rest of them, explaining we should have a functional government.
Tells us how to cut waste, cut red tape, streamline the bureaucracy, change procurement rules, change the personnel rules, and create a government that works better and costs less.
I've read it, and where it says the president should, the president will.
Among the 800 recommendations, eliminating 12% of the federal workforce, merging some government agencies like the FBI, the DEA, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, closing hundreds of government offices outside Washington.
From the day I took office, one of the commitments that I made to the American people was that we would do a better job here in Washington in rooting out wasteful spending.
You didn't. You
we
created
thought
this
that it was
entire
entirely appropriate
infrastructure
for our governments and our agencies to try to root out waste, large and small, in a systematic way. It means cutting some programs that I think are worthy, but we may not be able to afford right now. A lot of the action is in Congress and legislative, but in the meantime, we don't need to wait for Congress in order to do something about wasteful spending that's out there. We haven't seen as much action out of Congress as we'd like, and that's why we launched on our own initiative the campaign to cut waste. And we're going to keep on finding every possible way that we can do that, even if Congress is not acting. There you go.
They didn't do any of that. Obviously, they created this entire infrastructure for themselves. They were paying their entities, and the Democrats were the beneficiaries of all of our tax dollars. And they did this for decades. Think about $1 trillion Democratic infrastructure that was stood up for them by them and was winning on both ends, right? They were paying their friendly media, paying their friendly candidates, and suppressing the rest of us, suppressing who was disfavored. Here is somebody who was astute at the early outset of the 2024 election, who explained that Kamala Harris was a terrible candidate, that Joe Biden was even worse. Dean Phillips ran, and he got scolded by the Democrats, saying, how dare you try to offer an alternative vision for the future of the country? And now he's also saying this is not working out well for them. All this hystericism over the DOGE cuts is showing Americans who the Democrats really are and who they fight for, which is really themselves. Here is Dean Phillips.
Given that viewpoint, what do you make of what Elon Musk is doing in the present?
Well, Laura, thanks for having me. I have to tell you, I watched this with some real mixed emotions because I'm a long-suffering Democrat that wished my party would pay more attention, A, to the issues that more Americans are finding important, but B, to management and to efficiency and to competency. And I have to tell you, Laura, I watched that hearing today. I intentionally watched it and tried to do it objectively, just as an American paying attention to a committee hearing. And I got to tell you, I was really embarrassed for my Democratic colleagues, Mr. Garcia and others, because the fact of the matter is this is not playing well around the country.
Nope.
People want the government to work better. They believe that Mr. Musk, one of the most extraordinary entrepreneurs in human history, who does not fail at just about anything, they want him to do this, most Americans. They wanted Trump. They elected him. And I just would hope that my Democratic colleagues might change the strategy and perhaps actually work with Republicans to identify waste and fraud and actually attack that, because then they would have some more credibility as it relates to the constitutional issues and the ones that are actually going to hurt human beings, including federal employees who are now being used as pawns. So, but that is how most Americans feel. But Democrats are not projecting that, and I'm deeply concerned about leadership right now.
Yeah, it's a strange thing that's happening, and it doesn't feel like they have any uniformity amongst the senior leadership. But it does feel like they're getting orders, like their donors, the people who are frothy liberals who just live for the fight. It feels like they're sending the messages out. You have to get out there and fight, fight, fight. I don't care what it is. Keep that money on. Like, remember, a lot of these Democrats, I think, are just paid for by their donors and by their entities, the institutions who they represent. And if those institutions are on the verge of losing everything, it's a do or die situation for them. They have no choice but to get out there, lest their political power evaporate. And we're excited to watch as it does. So Dean Phillips, I think, articulates a nice vision forward for the Democrats, and that actually would be more threatening, like if they came back and they said, wow, we had no idea. But here's what we think our priorities should be. And we're ready to work with the Republicans to cut this, this, and this, but not this, because this is critical for the workers in Michigan, right? Would be a smart thing to do. But they're not that smart. They're too caught up in their old ideologies, and that is to our benefit. And so we're going to be here continuing to cover this, my friends. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for sharing the show with a friend or family member, and we'll see you back here on the next one. All right, my friends. Well, it's been a hell of a stream, and so I want to thank you for joining us. If you're just joining us, let me give you a quick recap on what we talked about. We had a bunch of good updates on this lawsuit because Trump was victorious in this one. The unions lost. They have no standing, and they sued in the District of Massachusetts on a claim over which the court had no subject matter jurisdiction at all. And so it got dismissed, and that's a big victory for President Trump. We had good reaction here. We saw RFK Jr. get sworn in and also opine on USAID and what a disaster it is. And Trump said, IRS is coming next. And according to Ron Wyden, they're already there. The IRS is in, the DOGE is in the IRS building. Then we talked about how Pam Bondi is no longer going to be defending the Humphreys executor case, saying that that dumb exception that they shoved in there is not constitutionally literate. And then we went through Amy Berman Jackson, who is trying her hardest to distinguish Humphreys executor's exception with the FTC from the special counsel and make sure that those, well, essentially not really distinguish it, but say that they're the same and distinguish SELA law, saying that the CFPP is not the same as the special counsel and saying that the special counsel is more like an FTC body. And that's why she can keep him in there, and she is going to keep him in there for the foreseeable future. We'll, of course, have a hearing at the end of February on that, and we will be covering that. Hopefully you join us as we do. Meanwhile, other good news today, Kash Patel made it out of committee. So the next step will be a full confirmation vote with him in front of the Senate very, very soon. And then lastly, we read through this new ridiculous lawsuit by federal government workers who are suffering from emotional damage. Emotional damage.
Emotional damage.
That one.
Emotional damage.
Democrats everywhere, all across the federal government, are experiencing emotional damage. And they're suing over that. Norm Eisen is the one who's leading the charge on that. And our Democrat in residency, who is cognizant of what's actually happening out there, Dean Phillips, says the Democrats are not doing so good for themselves. And so now, my friends, it's time to hear from you, and we'll see what you say about all of this and more, of course. Thank you so much for sending in these super chats, these donos. Thank you for becoming membos. We have great members only streams, and we would love to have you come join us. We go live in the mornings, and we do Saturday shows as well. And you can sign up by clicking the join button on YouTube or join us at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Or if you're watching on Rumble, you can click the join locals button there as well. So here's what's coming in today. We've got this one from Bondi. Says, I think all of the get Trump stuff that we've seen since inception is because they all knew that he was going to expose the grift. Yeah, I think you're right about that, Bondi. I don't think that they had any idea it was going to be like this at all. I didn't. Why would they? I mean, I remember specifically, and you guys were here when I said this, so you hold me to it. I said if they shrink the government basically at all, like if they shrink it by 1%, that would be a historic victory. That would be like akin to like the Second American Revolution, because it's like never happened, right? It gets bigger. Every president, it gets bigger. So if they could even shrink it by 1%, and then Elon comes in, he's like, actually 50%. We're going to cut the deficit by half. Like, what? It goes from like 10,000 to 400? What? I can only take so much. That's not true. We can take much more. Thank you, Mr. President. We're increasing our capacity. Jesser Bob, what's up, Jesser Bob? Says, your mind maps remind me of the displays the Epoch Times includes with new subscriptions. And I haven't seen those. Yeah, Jesser Bob. But we're breaking out the mind maps again. Your boy was mind mapping last night because there's so many cases and so much stuff going on. So we'll break those out here soon. Bodie says, I think all of the get Trump stuff. Thank you for that. And Jesser Bob. We got Suzanne Hag in the house. What's up, Suzanne? Thank you for becoming a membo. Great to see you. You too, Scott H. and Belinda, all becoming membos. Great to see you guys. check out this morning's stream, and we'll see you tomorrow morning live. Good to see you guys. Hey, Mrs. T. Rush says, hey, thanks, Rob. Your mom is wonderful. Mrs. T. Rush, I'm glad you guys got to chat. We love our mama here. What's up, Rick D? Says, hey, good thing I have 3 screens, LOL. I have Locals, YouTube, and Rumble all going so I can see all the chats. Heck yeah, baby. It's like Watcher Inception. You don't want to miss anything, too. And that's a great setup, too, by the way. And thanks for supporting us on 3 platforms, Rick D. Good to see you, Rick D. Hey, what's up? Barbara Johnson in the house just became a new membo. And Scooby Jew is here. Man, that's great. Scooby Jew. And hey, look. That's amazing. Welcome. Shalom. Hey, what's up? David W. says Liz Warren funneled her money through her tribe. Liz Warren funneled her money through her Indian tribe. Yeah. And what did the tribe get? Like 1/10/24 of the revenue, probably. Hey, Michelle says activist judges pen options in favor of political alliances to draw out the process. Bates has said some stupid stuff to defend politicians. Can the White House cite the previous rulings which were in favor of a Democratic president? Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think we're basically trying to flesh that out right now. But they're doing that. So for example, like with the CFBP, that's great precedent under CELA law for the Treasury firing case. Right? So they're digging that out. Hey, look, I mean, we already fired this. In fact, they brought that up already. They said Joe Biden fired the head of the Social Security Administration when he came in. So we have equal power as before. And that was the other point of this. It's like the Supreme Court has to kick these things back because it's for future presidents as well. It's like not just for Trump. Like as much as they want to just shackle Trump, they cannot set that precedent. It's insane precedent what they're establishing, which is why we were basically saying it's like a compliance trap, right? They were tactically complying to be overly compliant to show there's a clear record of the judiciary encroaching on the executive, and that's unconstitutional. And there's plenty of prior precedent that I think we'll see as the briefings mature. Thank you for the nice dono, Michelle. Hey, Scooter McDooter, what's up, Scooter? Says Democrats claim that Trump will never give up power while simultaneously saying he has sold his power to Elon. So I'm not sure which narrative I'm supposed to follow now. Yeah. And the Democrats have been really having a tough time trying to assemble around a particular narrative. So it goes from like, democracy is ending, constitutional crisis, accessing your private data. Now it's like you've seen some people kind of doing the concession attempt. Well, there do need to be cuts, but not like USAID cuts, some people, right? Or not like this cut, like National Endowment of Democracy cuts. Like, let's keep those cuts, right? But don't cut all of them. Just keep their carve-outs, but cut everyone else's. No. They're all gone. Economath, Humphreys only for quasi-leg and executive and judicial independence regulation for officers. Purely executive officers. The on-point precedent would be Myers versus U.S. 1926 case, 272 U.S. 52. Economath with the case sites there. Thank you, Economath. Mrs. T. Rush says, RFK Jr. is like Batman. Saw folks off. Now he wants revenge. And he's in the house. We're happy about that. Nick Stradamus. What's up, Nick Stradamus? Says we should call them the Intel Avengers. What did Trump call them? Like genius force? Like super genius force? Whatever. It's much better than me. Anything I said. Knox, what's up? Says, what a happy Thursday, all. RFK Jr. is the man. He was looking beautiful and so proud. Bet his wife was looking beautiful and so proud. Bet she is happy she hung in there and didn't cave to the Hollywood BS. That's true, yeah. His wife looked beautiful and he looked hot too, says Knox. He did look good. They both look good. Hey, Deluxe Night. The nominees are coming together like Voltron, the defender of the universe, and the Thundercats. I'm loving it, and I'm still laughing every day. Yeah, that's kind of the one I was thinking about. There were some other ones that as a kid, I can't remember the names of them. But like, yeah, they would all come together, like Power Rangers and all the things. We got those. Voltron, man, that's pretty cool. Hey, Sev Russ is in the house. Sev Russ says, I don't know what made me want to puke more today. Activist judges or my leg workout. Man, Sev Russ, that's awesome. I'm going to do legs tomorrow. I swear. Probably. I will. I'm going to do them. Yeah, well, there was a lot of pukey judges today, but I'm sure you also crushed those quads. So, it's hard to know. Hopefully it was the legs, but there's plenty of time for more judges. Thank you, Severus. Hey, what's up? Lenny Malley says, don't forget to like this video, share it everywhere you've ever shared it. Introduce every person you've ever met, even the clerk at the grocery store, to the show. Thank you, Lenny. Glocky says, never forget, these federal agencies that are scared eliminated a boy, his dog, his older brother. Then the FBI eliminated Vicky Weaver while holding her baby, while looking through their sniper scopes, all because the court clerk didn't send the notice of a trial date change to Weaver. Don't you ever feel sorry for these people losing their jobs? I don't. Yeah, I don't at all. Glocky, what's up? McDonald's now hiring fired federal employees with Ivy League degrees. You don't want them cooking your food. They couldn't hack it at McDonald's. They went to Harvard. McDonald's. They're right. Way too complicated for them. Rob, can you go over SELA law? It's been talked about multiple times, but if you've talked about it, I missed it. We did talk about it. Yeah, we did spend some time on it. So I don't know what show that was in, but SELA law was about the CFPB, quickly, the entity which is now gone or in the process of being gone. And it was very similar. They said you can't fire the head of that agency. They sued. The courts said you can fire the head of that agency because of the executive. And they're analogizing the SELA case to this special counsel case because he's also the head, a single head of an independent agency. But we did talk about it, Jim in the house. So maybe, I forget what day that was, but we certainly did. Glocky, and it's come up in a couple of contexts too. Maybe we talked about it on a Membo stream only. I don't remember. But we read through a bit of it. Hey, be transparent. Show us your income. Trump says, fine. Now it's your turn. They say, no, don't look. Glocky says, I'm sorry, but Durbin looks and sounds terrible. Trump is literally physically and mentally breaking these people, especially the older ones. They might want to slow down and relax. Yeah, just take a breath. You can't keep up. Stop trying. One old guy's opinion says, all these activists, judges, and experts are running scared in the kitchen when you turn the lights on. Trump has appointees and DOGE are coming in like the Orkin man, to clean out the infestation. Glocky says, here's an honest question for everyone. In the next 4 years, do you think we see someone like Schiff or a federal judge or governor or mayor get indicted and put on trial? Yeah, I would say, yeah, probably, 100%. Somebody, I don't know who it's going to be. It could be for anything, violating federal laws, immigration laws, corruption, leaking info, money, anything. But do you think we will see it and it signals an absolute change in American justice and politics? Maybe. Yeah, I think we will. I mean, over the next 4 years, somebody's going to get indicted for something. I wonder if it'll be like a Gold Bar Bob situation. I mean, that was a big deal. He's a senator who just got sentenced to 11 years, which is a big deal. So will we have more of that? Probably. Wait until we see more of the corruption. Hopefully there is more. Glocky's here saying the beatings will continue until morale improves, until you learn to like it. Scuba Diva says these idiots, the current POTUS and vice POTUS and agency heads all have photos hanging in the buildings they run. They had to be changed with the current photos, but I don't think they're doing it. The FBI also is not changing it, according to, I think, Steve Friend, FBI suspendable on X. Rick Donner says, just in. New York City Mayor Eric Adams announces an executive order letting ICE agents operate on Rikers Island after meeting with Tom Homan from law enforcement. Glocky says, if you go on the DOGE website and look at the executive branch and look at the employees, over 200,000 have been hired and working there for less than a year because Joe Biden was just filling the ranks. Rob, what's up? It's our bureaucrat DEI jobs and we want them now. Call someone who cares. Says, let's all become counselors and psychiatrists, prescribe wearing MAGA hats as the cures. Yeah, that'd be a funny one. Try to cure TDS. It's like acclimating to it. Okay, just wear this MAGA hat for 5 minutes a day. Then work yourself up to 10 and then 20 and then you'll be okay. One old guy says, USAID, FU, Border Patrol, we have office vacancies for your mission. Come on in. We left the light on for you. And we're getting rid of the dead weight. Glocky says, what's the worst part about this? They were grants, which means they don't need to be paid back. And why is Homeland buying illegals, cars, and homes? $22 billion spent on vehicles and homes for illegals. Useless idiot says Trump and Mexican government green light U.S. special forces to go in and train the Mexicans special forces on how to take out the cartel with a training mission. Wow, that's crazy. So they green lit something like that? Man, I can't wait to see the details. Thank you, useless idiot. Wasn't useless at all. It was very useful. Rob, these employees, bureaucrats are domestic terrorists. Yeah, kind of homegrown, violent domestic terrorists is what it's feeling like. Art Pollard says, government workers should do Biden's advice and now just learn to code, which would have been good advice until AI came on. Now there's no real reason to learn to code since the AI will do it for you. And you can see that in the numbers. A lot of coders are not being hired now. So I don't know what else they should learn, but they're going to have to figure it out. Thank you, Art. Hopefully Japan's good. Just Me says, I listened to Mike Benz on Joe Rogan last night, which was great. I listened to some of that. Says, talking about USAID, about halfway through, I was lining my cap with tin foil. If it's too dirty for the CIA to do, they give it to the USAID to do. Yeah, and Mike Benz is like looking a little nervous out there. He's like, I'm going to tell you about this. But if you see any red dots on my forehead, you let me know, okay? Rick D. I don't know what that one was. Let's see here. Okay, we got Rick D. Glocky says, hey, Rob, all these J. Does and their weird job titles and descriptions might actually be CIA agents or assets. They work hand in glove with the CIA, other dark military. You might be seeing a bunch of CIA people getting big mad and their dark money is going away. One old guy says, Maxine Waters looks pretty terrible out there. We got E. Poindexter says, too many government people not ready to work at the speed of business. They better catch up. Yeah, it's exactly right. Like, we get stuff done, okay? We actually have to be productive for a minute. Get used to it. Thank you, E. Poindexter. You're right. James Anderson says, can we confirm Kash Patel already? I know, James. It should be soon. I think, I don't know if we'll get it in before the weekend, but I hope so. One old guy's opinion says activist judges, AGs, governors, TV experts are saying what FAFO really is. Daring SCOTUS to rule whether the Constitution really is the law of the land or just toilet paper for activists to wipe their booties with. Yeah, honestly, I think that the Supreme Court is not going to have a choice but to come in and reaffirm the strength and the power of the executive. What's up, Spuds? Rob, I used to review a lot of these environmental and energy efficiency projects. While some actually had merit, it was a 10-to-1 ratio, with many that didn't or were completely mismanaged. Side note, Maxine Waters is flipping her wig, literally. Was she? What's up, Rob? Obama was probably grifting money from it like Biden, Hillary et al. They found the waste and they pocketed it. Combat Boot Mom, good to see you. Hope your anniversary was amazing last night. Says, I, however, placed economy among the first and most important Republican virtues, and public debt as the greatest of the dangers to be feared. From Thomas Jefferson. Yeah, because there's no real accountability for it. It's everybody's problem. It's like, the tragedy of the commons is really what it is, where you have like a public space and everybody just kind of mucks it up because nobody has ownership over it. It's like the public debt. Nobody cares. It's everybody's problem, so it's nobody's problem. And that's the danger, is that it can be all-consuming, which it currently is. Sheila the Pooh, 1,000,000 hugs to you. Thank you, Sheila. 10 membos coming in, courtesy of Sheila. Tippy River is here. Brian Schaefer. What's up, Miata Mama? Fred Prevo. We got Janae Rose. Baja is here. Rob Kane. Carol. We got Glinda Cohn and Craig G. Gifted membos, courtesy of Sheila Pooh. 10 new membos coming in, thanks to you. We've got this one from Coyote in the house. 6 months as a membo, 2/3 of the way to a full baby. Says, I met meet wife 3 weeks, married 40 years, Combat Boot Mama. So Combat Boot Mama told us, I think yesterday was a 52-year anniversary. So 40 years here. And Combat Boot Mama, I think, got married in 4 weeks. So Coyote, they did it in 3. What's up, Coyote? George Garbanzo says, I didn't know how wealthy I could be if I only sued for emotional damage. From George Garbanzo. I know, very upset. My feelings are hurt. I had a nice corner cubicle. Everything is in disarray now. Hey, Rick D from Babylon B says RFK Jr. is sworn in. Did you guys see this? I didn't notice this when this happened. but he's sworn in on a raw 32-ounce holy ribeye is what it was. It was a holy ribeye, the King James version. Knox says, the Satan-worshiping Canadian government is still trying to eliminate the ostriches. You know, they could use a shout out. What the hell's going on in Canada? They're taking out the ostriches? Lawyers from the Canadian Justice Department filed an appeal to overturn the stay of execution of 390 healthy ostriches. I don't know what's going on in Canada, but that's not good. Hey, it's Rice Baby. Dun, 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 bringing in 50 new membos. Bruce Rice Baby. Thank you, Bruce. Look at this, man. 50 membos. You're amazing. Let's welcome them. Bakafer is here. Cindy Smith. We got Dusty Storm. Waffle Salter. Amazing Disgrace. Mountain Cat. David Severn. Brian P. What's up, blah? Madam Von Kook is here. Jean Padilla. We got Renee Collins. What's up, Frank V? Cassie's here. Terry R. We got Eden's Vision. We have RP got one. Jerry. But Coffee First is here. Crazy Cossack. We've got Lisa Rathman Crumley. Welcome. Spacetime Continuum, Gonzo Mom, Buns, Bill Minich, the Three Beers, Joe Baker, Chris Capaho in the house. We got Rocky Mountain Lady, Pablo Maidrano in the house. Odor of Mendacity is in the house. What's up, Odor? Good to have the Fannyland in here. Unca Danny, Aerospark. What's up, Runts Rants? We got Jason Alator, Justin Wright, Kenneth Ward, Katz PJs. We got Tyler Lees, Francis Montgomery, Ryan Hayes, Dustin Van Pelt, Serial Killer is here. We got Richard Brown, Varia, Alan Hassan, Nick Matthews, Steve B, Deanne B, and Dan. Gifted membos courtesy of Bruce Rice Baby. Dun, 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 dun. Thank you, Bruce, for doing that. We appreciate you being here, man. And bringing in 50 new membos. You rock. Thank you, Bruce. James Anderson says Elon and DOGE is going to find the loose change. Here we go from James. Sharpie Guy says, great coverage again, my friend. Thank you so many times for it. And blessings, amigo. Thank you, Sharpie Guy. You're amazing. And Boopsy says, I meant to thank you for your explanation of the word care and to tell you that since then, I heard Trump, Musk, and others using the word care. Yeah, it's an important word. We have to take care. What does that mean? Care implies care. Like you got to care for the thing. Like you hold it and care. You don't just like do whatever the person told you to do with the thing. You got to look at it and care for it. You have some discretion there. It's their constitutional prerogative. One old guy's opinion says, and if they don't like it, they can check the executive. They can impeach him. That's the mechanism. But they won't do it because they're weak. One old guy's opinion says it was done some time ago and the trained Army Mexican officers became the cartel named Zetas. History repeats itself. History repeats itself. Democrat screams music to my ears, impeach activist judges, and handle the business of making America great and healthy again. Yeah, it's very enjoyable. All the delicious tears from the crying left. Tyler Lees. What's up, Tyler Lees? Super Nintendo, jacked as hell. That's how we're all going to look now that RFK Jr. is in the house. Thank you, Tyler Lees. We're all getting jacked. And this morning on Locals, I said none of us are going to have necks anymore because our traps are going to be so big, you know? Going to be like moving around like this. We're going to be all so jacked and huge. And then many people said, well, I, kind of like my neck. I don't want to look like that, which is valid. Will Crump says, loved the emotional damage video. That's what this was. Democrats are going through a lot of this right now. Emotional damage.
Emotional damage.
Democrats everywhere, all across America, experiencing emotional damage all over the place. All right, my friends, thank you so much for sending those in. Let's check in with our friends on X before we round it out on the day. Barb Schaefer says, can Trump appoint a special counsel to investigate the malfeasance of failing to disclose his relationship with Hunter? And in the meantime, set him aside? I think that would be more analogous to like just an actual investigation. So like there's no real conflict there because Biden's out of office. Like special counsel's like, you need to review kind of the current operations of the government. Like if there was a crime and Hunter committed a crime or Joe committed a crime, that's probably within the purview of just the regular DOJ. Fred FEMA offered citizens in Lahaina $700, but they gave $59 million to illegals in 5-star hotels. If that doesn't make you sick, it does. It makes you sick. This whole thing, it's been like, wow, much worse than we even thought. And the people who knew about it have been just looking us in the eyes and lying to our faces for years. It's sick. Hey, 80 Rainey says, every day's like Christmas. Fred says, so there are grifters doing Soros's work, and Grandma Mac's dad says, how are federal judges above the elected president? Good question. Mini Tika. Thank you, Mini Tika, for shouting us out over on Rumble. Great place to follow us over on Rumble. Thank you, Mini Tika, for plugging our Rumble channel. And thanks, friends, for following us over there. We appreciate that. But, my friends, we are going to leave it there on the day. I want to thank you for joining us. Of course, we are coming back tomorrow. We want to thank our mods and our meme smiths, K-Bean, Donut Mind Me, Carrie B. We got Playing Hooky, Dog Digger, and Janek modding the fort down for us, keeping things oh so nice and beautiful and orderly. We're grateful for them. But we are going to leave it there on the night, my friends. It has been a beautiful stream. Tomorrow, we're coming back. It's going to be a Friday. We're happy about that, but we're not done yet. Going to have a lot of business to attend to, and we're going to need to see you here in order to do that appropriately. We are going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.